people are scrambling to try to figure out how to monetize directly through their audience and to have more control sort of financially without having to depend on whether or not sort of the advertising industry has a lot of money or doesn't have a lot of money. And so people diversifying revenue and being able to have their own streams that they have direct control of, and also being able to give the audience a chance to, directly support those creators that they love and trust is something that I think we're seeing a lot more and will continue to see. That's just sort of a little bit of a more progressive, I think, financial model that is just becoming necessary as things are changing so rapidly.
Welcome to PodBiz, the money behind the mic, where we get into the business of podcasting. I'm Norma Jean Belenke, a podcast and media strategist, specializing in marketing and audience development.
And I'm John Kiernan. I'm a podcast producer, and we're asking the question that's on everyone's mind. Where is the money in podcasting?
Each week, we talk to podcast industry professionals, marketers, and creators who are turning podcasts into a thriving business and making the industry what it is today.
With real revenue, real strategies, and real results.
If you're looking to grow or scale your show, and of course monetize, you're in the right place.
So let's get down to PodBiz.
Today we're speaking with Carly Baker, Head of Media Partnerships at HubSpot Media Network. We'll be talking about Carly's expertise in building out HubSpot's podcast network, her amazing insight into podcast newsletters and what she's learned along the way, and their video strategy that differentiates feeds from video to audio podcasts. Stay tuned, and let's get down to PodBiz. Carly, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to sit down and chat.
We are so excited to chat with you today. We're going to get into all things HubSpot. So let's start off right off the bat. $1 million question, PodBiz signature question. Carly Baker, Head of Media Partnerships at the HubSpot Media Network.
Yes.
Where is the money in podcasting?
Hopefully it's in creators' bank accounts. That's where I would like to see it.
Absolutely. Yes, 2026. We're recording this just at the end of 2025. So that is where we want to see the money. Absolutely. And I think, for a long time within podcasting, that's been something that has been everybody's wish, right? It's an open medium. It's a free medium in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, with hosting and certain other aspects, you get what you pay for. But, there is Spotify for free. There's lots of free products out there. And so it's really been an equalizer in terms of creators being able to monetize their own work.
Absolutely. It's never been easier.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about, how you work with creators in terms of monetization and some of the trends that you're seeing.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I mean, I think my background specifically is working with creators in the business category. And so when I started working with podcasters, 4 years ago at the start of the network, we were seeing really progressive financial models. Yes, they were working with us, HubSpot, as, sort of a traditional advertiser relationship. But many of the clients that I worked with had already developed really robust, sort of direct audience to creator monetization strategies. And they sort of treated their podcast like a business from the start. And what I think is so interesting now is we're seeing sort of the rest of the creator and influencer space sort of trying to follow that path of understanding just with sort of the unreliability of the advertising industry and the way that money is kind of coming and going and that things are different. Like people are scrambling to try to figure out how to monetize directly through their audience and to have more control sort of financially without having to depend on whether or not sort of the advertising industry has a lot of money or doesn't have a lot of money. And so people diversifying revenue and being able to have, their own streams that they have direct control of, and also being able to give the audience a chance to, directly support those creators that they love and trust is something that I think we're seeing a lot more and will continue to see. That's just sort of a little bit of a more progressive, I think, financial model that is just becoming necessary as things are changing so rapidly.
Absolutely. And what you've just said is something we've heard quite a bit on PodBiz, right? If you take yourself seriously and you treat your podcast like a business, it will be treated like a business. Your audience will resonate with that. I think that that's a really important thing to mention because creators of all sizes within many different genres of podcasting can build a sustainable community that financially supports them. So that's number one, right? Obviously within HubSpot, we're looking at a B2B community, right? We're looking at B2B leaders. And I want to dive into that a little bit in a second. But like you said, with advertising, we're still in early days, we're still within changing CPMs. We're still within, minimum guarantees in some circumstances. I remember a couple of years ago, we were in the wild west of minimum guarantees. And so I think as that model right? I mean, that was wild times, you know, that was like blank check, cowboy, you know, Wild West moment of like, you know, do you want to start a podcast? I don't get out of bed for less than $4,000 a day kind of, you know, energy. I think I remember specifically, I think it was Podcast Movement 2022 it really just felt like it was palpable in the air. So I definitely hear you on that trend. And as a lot of that landscape changes, right? Audience is key. And as a creator, your job is to have your audience trust you. That's really, really important, right? You can sell to them, but if you sell them something that doesn't resonate, that comes off, you know, as a bad offer time and time again, they're going to get turned off. And then any offer you sell them is going to get turned off. So building that audience trust, like you said, in that direct to audience model is really valuable.
100%. I think it's really interesting when we're looking at sort of bigger networks and more of sort of what I would classify as like enterprise shows. So shows where, you know, over time they've grown, they've started, you know, with doing no ads, and then they've started doing host read ads for brands that make sense. And then they've grown, and then they've maybe done host read ads for brands that don't make sense for their audience. And then they, you know, go sort of fully onto programmatic. And then their audience is like, we hate this. Like, why are we hearing ads for DraftKings? And so I do think that like the relationship with advertising and sort of how it looks and feels to your audience members, like as a show grows and scales and maybe enters a network or maybe starts doing programmatic, like there's a lot of, I think, sort of controversy on the audience size, and like your audience can tell when there's more ads. They can tell when the ads are less genuine. They can tell when the ads are not relevant, and like they're very vocal about that. And so I do think from an advertising perspective that more that you can do, you know, to have those ads stay really relevant for your audience is super important. Just again, going back to what you were saying about trust, to be able to maintain that. And also if you're able to understand like this is additional value that I can actually offer them and monetize through, and have that be a part of your ad strategy, I think that's another way to do it, and sort of to scale in sort of a more authentic manner and on that side of things.
Absolutely. And neither of us are true like analytic ad nerds. I definitely, you know, have that side to me, but it's not what I'm known for. You too. But we've also had a lot of big names on the podcast, right? Adam McNeil from Adopter, Giancarlo Pizarro from Crooked, Heather Osgood from True Native, speaking about the same thing, right? If you have offers to your audience that aren't authentic, it's going to turn them off. And so it's really important as the creator, as the owner of your media, to offer your audience true value. Absolutely.
100%. Love it.
So tell us on the B2B side, in terms of the HubSpot Media Network, what it's like working in terms of those B2B partnerships. Because when I think HubSpot, I think sales CRM, right? And obviously the Media Network has a lot of shows, but tell us about what that journey's been like in terms of building that out.
Yeah, so I joined at a really interesting time at HubSpot. I joined just a couple of months after we acquired The Hustle, and that sort of, you know, was our first media product that we had. It was a newsletter business, and my first million, the podcast, came as a part of that. And so when we, you know, ended up with a podcast, we're like, well, and we have a newsletter business, we have a podcast. What are we going to do? How are we going to grow and expand sort of our greater media efforts at HubSpot? And so that ended up leading us to launch the podcast network. HubSpot had been sort of a silent or a more quiet player in the podcast space previously. We've had shows, I think, since 2012. We had a really popular show called Weird Work, and we've always kind of been in the audio and video space for quite a long time as a business. And so we knew we had an understanding of how the model worked, of what we needed to do from a production and editorial side, like how to decide whether or not a show made sense for us to invest in. But really sort of the start of everything was with that acquisition, with sort of the overall goal of us wanting to build basically a media business within HubSpot. So as I said, I joined really early after the acquisition, and at the time, I think the podcast network had like 5 or 6 shows. We had My First Million, we had Entrepreneurs on Fire, we had Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher, a lot of the sort of the more long-standing kind of businessy shows. And we were just figuring out like, okay, what does it look like? We're working with creators for the first time. Like, how are we providing value to them besides from a monetary basis? Like all of these things really just kind of like building the plane while we were flying it for the first couple of months for sure. And as sort of the podcast network grew very rapidly, and we realized like working with creators and being able to use their audiences to talk about our product was really successful. That then led to us building a YouTube network and then a newsletter network, and we're in the process of building another network. And so really everything really started in terms of working with creators just from working with podcasters, and now we're expanding so much from channel to channel. And on the owned brand side, The Hustle has always been our flagship brand because of the acquisition, but we have 3 other media brands that we've built now. So we're fully talking and creating content for HubSpot's entire ICP. So we have The Hustle, our founder and entrepreneurship brand. We have a brand for marketers. We have an AI brand. We have a sales brand. Like, we're creating content that's relevant to everyone who would make sense to be a customer of ours. And so as we've expanded, we've stayed really close to sort of where the parent business wants to go and sort of what their goals are in terms of customers, and try to stay really close and relevant on the product side of things too, which I think is a really interesting business model in terms of the content side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many follow-ups I want to ask you about that. But I think the first thing is that it's just so smart, right? People who are directly involved in business, millions and millions of users, are an active audience, right? They're there. And also because of the data on HubSpot, trends, what's coming up, what's working, which marketers are successful, even which kind of email sequences work. I love HubSpot, big fan. I've used it. I've used the CRM, love it. And, obviously the podcast network is fantastic, but I think just it's such a great case study of speaking to your audience, right? It's like, hey, we have all these business folks, we have all these sales folks, we have all these people, who are using our pipeline, who are using our CRM, and we also want to be able to speak to them. They're a built-in audience. So I think that first off, fantastic. Second of all, I think I really want to ask you, what do you look for in terms of a show's success? Because I think everybody listening, whether they're on the network side, whether they're a creator who has, maybe their own independent property, what are the features and facets of a successful podcast that have worked for you guys? And what really is the secret sauce for the HubSpot Media Network just right now?
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is a great question. It's really interesting. When I started at the network, I think the industry in general, everyone wanted to have the biggest shows, right? It was all about reach. It was all about having the most downloads, having the biggest, having the biggest audience.
Oh yeah.
That was a huge priority for us, especially as we started the network, right? We really wanted to have heavy hitters. We wanted to have people that were really experienced, that understood how to run a show from start to finish, had an editorial POV, understood like why production is important, all of those things. And so we really tried to sort of start the network by investing in sort of that like more enterprise or like top tier talent. And over time, I mean, so many things have happened on the analytics side, right? We know downloads do not equal people. Downloads are now a declining number. There's all these other things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out to Dan Meisner, who's been on the show.
Yes,
the death of the download.
Yes.
I think that's his catchphrase now. He's going to be known as Dan Death of the Download Meisner.
Yes.
I definitely went to his like secret session in London in 2025. All about the death of the download. It wasn't on the schedule. It was like a, message sent out kind of secret LinkedIn thing. And, it was really interesting. Obviously I've seen it with clients. I've seen it in analytics, but knowing that it's an industry-wide trend is fascinating. And I think it was one of those things where to know that everybody's on the same page and to talk about it openly, not in a competitive way, but in a very collaborative way, as our industry is a lot of the time. Has been, helpful for so many people who work on the growth side, who work on the ad side. I think it's something where we're all seeing that trend for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more analytics and just sort of data literacy in general that I think will come as a result of this. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's attribution now. People say, oh, attribution is so much easier now because, we know so much more, and it's actually way harder now because there's too much information and everyone uses different terms for the same thing and has a different way that they qualify those things in terms of the actions that the user is taking. And so it's actually very confusing, I think, for many people, both on the ad side and on the creator side, to understand like, what are the metrics that matter? How is this actually telling me if my audience is growing or shrinking? Like, how am I telling like the quality of the people that are listening? All of these things, right? And so I do think we're at kind of an interesting turning point in terms of analytics, and that's definitely a big thing that we and someone who is at a network like needs to do due diligence about, right? Like they need to understand the metrics that actually are telling you audience size, and understand sort of how to get that from individuals. But going back to sort of vetting shows, I mean, I think what we're basically saying here is that size does not matter. Like we have shows and newsletters and YouTube channels that we work with of all shapes and sizes. It's no longer sort of a barrier to entry to be able to work with us, which I think is great because that's been a big change over the time that I've been here. Editorially having a POV that aligns with sort of where the industry is and where the industry is going is really important, especially in the business content. We don't want to co-sign anyone speaking about business in a way that we don't agree with as a business, right? Like we do a ton of education ourselves for our customers, and we really want to strategically align ourselves with people who share the same sort of philosophies and insights and have the same shared goal of just helping their audiences be able to do more in their career or more in their business.
Yeah.
So
Nobody
that's a
who
really
has
big
a bit
one.
of a grifting vibe. Obviously, that's not aligned with HubSpot. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we also sort of from like a moral and ethical standpoint too have
Absolutely.
essentially a scorecard that we use of like, okay, are they, we have a rubric basically that we use and that we look, we do social listening. We look everywhere that they are in the internet. Like it's not just, oh, we like the show and we like the person and this is good. There's a lot of due diligence like on the brand safety side that we do when we're thinking about shows.
Absolutely.
Which
Especially
I think is another
because
thing.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about business, it's something where thought leadership really matters, and the ethos of how different companies operate is important because it will dilute the brand if you're not careful. Brand safety is huge. We talk about it a lot on the ad side, but on the creator side, it's absolutely important. And we've had, gosh, who was it? We had Veronica Taylor from Acast Creator Network come in and talk about how some brands are just like, hey, this creator isn't a fit for ads. But, on that content side as part of a network, there's even more due diligence involved. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we, one of the things we really pride ourselves on is that we want our creators to have editorial freedom. So we don't want them to feel like we're telling them what to talk about or not talk about. And so because when they start to work with us, we have that POV, there is a lot of vetting that's done.
Of course. I mean, when you find the right person, you can kind of let them go off to the races, right? It's not something where you have to babysit them or, have a censor come in and monitor every episode. You want to have that trust. I think that's about finding the right fit for sure.
100%. I think the other thing too, that's super important to us and is very important to me as an individual is like, we're not in the business of being transactional with creators. So all of our engagements are long-term, very deep engagements. We really want to work one-on-one with the person to be able to provide them that individualized growth support. We have a community, we do programming, we want them to be with us at Podcast Movement. Like there's a lot that goes into it. That's not just, okay, we're paying you X amount of money per month for your ads and that's it. Like we really try to think about it as we're both growing, we're both contributing value to this relationship. Like they're helping us learn about what they're doing and about the industry and through a different lens, right? Because I think sometimes the information that us as folks on the industry or on the business side have is a little bit filtered, right? Like we're not necessarily in the same seat as the creator. And so there's mutual learnings, and the best clients that I've ever had have been just as invested
absolutely
of teaching us as I am teaching them, right? Like it's a shared collaboration. We're both trying to learn, and that's a huge part of the success.
And the best creators know their audience, right? Like if you're a creator out there and you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, HubSpot Media Network, like I'd love to be, a show that they feature or a partner. It's one of those things where the best partners know their show, know their audience, care about their audience, are like, get in there, get under my wing. Your audience is your baby, really. You have to watch out for them. You have to foster them. You have to really, feed them the right nutrients, really, in a lot of ways. And I think that that's super important. I mean, I think, with my clients on the audience development side and on the podcast marketing, whenever I speak about things, I'm thinking consumption, right? And when I speak about, okay, here's what we're going to do and here's what we're going to do, it's like, yes, obviously we can talk about aggregate numbers like you mentioned, and that's, a moving goalpost in a lot of ways, especially nowadays. But, when we're talking about consumption rates, right, that I'm making decisions from that place. I'm making decisions from a long-term relationship that you want to build with your audience. And when you work with creators and brands that understand that and have the same goal, it makes everything so much easier.
100%. And I think also there's something to be said about the level of investment too. It's like, I think they're often, and I've heard this from I've heard this from so many creators of like, oh, I joined a network, I got sold a network, and they told me all of these things, and like now I can't even get a hold of my account manager, and like they're not helping me, like they're not doing any of these things.
That's such a common trope. Yes, it's a very, very common trope.
It's a very common trope on the network side, but I will say there's also a lot of creators that do the same, where like they sell a story that they're going to be invested in, that they're going to do this, and then the reality is that they just want to be in the network to be able to get a check and just kind of continue to go on. I think you and I both know, being in the audience development space, like both parties have to contribute equally for the show to be able to grow and for it to be able to work. And like it's terrible.
It's terrible when you find a creator who, you know, has that spark, has a growing audience, has that, you know, joie de vivre. And then as soon as they, you know, hit a certain level of success, they check out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So finding people that are really committed to being a good partner is also like, there's a lot of sort of personal
of course,
vetting in terms of like the actual individual too, right? Because there's a lot of people that we could work with, and it's important that they understand sort of what the expectation is and how much we want them to contribute and how much we're contributing, and that it's just everyone's in agreement that we're all working together for a shared goal of growing the show.
Yeah, and that the expectations and goals are aligned. I think that that's really important. And as an industry, as we all develop as an industry, that's something that, you know, everyone is figuring out on an individual basis, and we're figuring out on an industry basis for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you next, in terms of some of the success that you're seeing with the podcast that you guys have within HubSpot Media Network, what is some of that secret sauce to success, and what does it look like, right? What are some of the milestones that you're seeing creators reach in terms of success and the audiences that they're building within the individual business communities? Because like you said, you know, it's niched out. Marketing, AI, it's something where there are so many different facets of business, and so many different people and users of HubSpot's overall platform are able to find the content that really supports them in their business goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the interesting things, and you know, I was thinking maybe we would escape talking about video, but here we are. I'm going to talk about video.
Let's talk about it.
So the interesting case I think about YouTube in terms of our owned brand. So the network is interesting. It's split into two buckets essentially. We have one side of the network, which is all of our creator deals. These are all of our licensed engagements. So these are all external creators that we work with on a licensing basis. It's a long-term engagement. It's a 2-year engagement. They sort of produce and run all of the editorial of their show, and then sort of the core of that agreement is the advertising licensing. But as I said, there's a lot of other things that play a part in that deal. The other side of the network are what we like to call our HubSpot originals. So these are all shows that all of our talent is in-house. We produce them in-house. All of the audience development is done in-house. It's all run within HubSpot. So these are kind of like our flagship original shows. And so our original shows we put on YouTube a couple of years ago. We were actually kind of in the first wave of people that were putting their podcasts on YouTube and doing long form video content. And I think the reason we were sort of at the forefront of that is because we had built the YouTube network with creators, and we had seen how much success there was as a platform. I mean, I think we all know one of the biggest challenges with podcasting, right, is a discoverability conversation. So search on every app is really terrible. We all thought Spotify was going to fix it. They didn't fix it. So we saw sort of from a search intent perspective how great YouTube was for that. And so we decided that we wanted to sort of pivot and test out video for our shows. We had done sort of historically in the past, My First Million had sort of a YouTube channel pre-acquisition, and there was at least some sort of channel presence there, but not really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not really taking it seriously in that sense. And
right. It was secondary, the originals, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very secondary. And now YouTube is probably our biggest channel for My First Million. And so it's really changed, and for our other original shows as well. But we've kind of done, you know, we have shows that have sort of different levels of maturity and different levels of audiences. So if you think about My First Million, like that is a cult audience. That is someone who Sam and Sean are very well known. People love the show. People are huge fans of them in general. They're everywhere on the internet, right? Like growing a show and putting a show like that on YouTube has a lot lower of a barrier to entry because the audience is already so big and they already want so more and are so obsessed with them that like they're fine going to a new platform. Whereas building a show on YouTube that like doesn't have an audience that thinks of them in that way is a lot harder. And so one of the ways that we've sort of combated it and helped us grow those other channels that don't have sort of the cult-like followings is really kind of following the general native YouTube content philosophy of like either having a search-based channel or a browse-based channel. So this is really interesting. And I think people that have been creating sort of YouTube native or YouTube channel style content for a long time, like think about their own channels in this way. So if you have a search-based channel, you're thinking about like playing the SEO game on YouTube. So you're doing keyword research, you're identifying like what questions people need answers to, like what they're asking, you're understanding like what the search volume is, and then you're creating content kind of that's derivative from those to be able to help you get discovered by people. So we have some channels that are mostly editorially built on a search basis. So that just helps us get picked up. It helps us take advantage sort of the YouTube algorithm. It helps us always sort of be delivering on the promise that like we're going to help people solve a problem in this episode. That works a lot better for like tutorials or like walkthrough based episodes than guest episodes sometimes. And so we've really sort of had to re-engineer what episodes look like and sort of what the mix of doing like that search intent based content is versus just content that we want to create that we know that is interesting for sort of our core audience and that we know is valuable. So figuring out that on the video side has been really interesting. And then we also have just browse intent channels. So when you think about a browse intent channel, that's just a video that's going to like pop up from your algorithm like on your YouTube homepage. And so thinking about like the positioning and packaging and titles and all of those for someone that's just going to like see something interesting is very different, right, than search intent. So those are kind of like
when I talk to people about this, absolutely, it's like, how long do you want to spend on optimizing your YouTube titles? We can go down that rabbit hole. And people are like, oh, can you just optimize our video? And it's like, yeah. And that's a whole other service because it's a real job, to be honest. It is a whole separate beast. And it's not, it's not just, video. It's definitely something where there's a science behind it and you have to A/B test, right? Yeah. Like there's so much behind it. I mean, even just like thumbnails. Yeah, it's a lot more about sort of traditional packaging and positioning. Like it's much more of like actually a marketing, like a full sort of marketing campaign or project for every episode because all of the touch points and all of the things matter.
Really,
they matter.
Yeah,
yes.
they make or break. Whereas like, you having a custom cover art for every episode on Apple Podcasts or not, like that's not going to do anything for you in terms of analytics. But on YouTube, it's like either your video is going to get picked up or not get picked up because of that. And so the amount of intentionality just from a packaging so and positioning labor. Thing is so much.
It's so much more labor. I mean, I talk to my clients about this all the time, and there's just that educational piece. I think you guys are doing it in house, but on the client education piece side, it's one of those things where I have to be like, absolutely, we can do this, and here's what it is. Here's what it entails. Here's the labor. Here's the science behind it. And it's definitely not just like optimize. There's a lot there. So I really appreciate you getting deep into it. I mean, I can talk about like A/B testing and thumbnails and title optimization for like hours, but it's just not something I want to be known for.
Yeah, I totally hear you.
Absolutely, but it is really important to know that distinction. And I think on the HubSpot side, I think it's really important to know that is an aspect of the business that can be grown, right, and that you're seeing results with.
Definitely, yeah, and it's also really changed our monetization strategy too. I mean, we even at the point now where like the audio product and the video product are different. Like we're shipping different products. Like they have different cuts. They're edited differently. The pacing is different. Like we are optimizing for both channels. And then our ad strategy is different as well. So like on the audio side, we are still treating it more as like a really top of funnel play, which is how we started at the network, right? I mean, the ultimate goal when we first started was that people were having this valuable business content. They were hearing ads for HubSpot. We understand that like making a software decision, buying a CRM is a really big decision. And it's not something that happens after listening to one ad, right? And so our entire goal was we wanted either when someone wanted to switch CRMs or invest in a CRM or other tools that they had a positive association with HubSpot. HubSpot came first to mind as like, oh, I need a CRM. Like I should use HubSpot. My favorite podcaster that I've been listening to for years talks about HubSpot and loves HubSpot. And so that's sort of how we think about monetization on the audio side. But on the video side, right, there's obviously way more to be done. And so when we started to go on YouTube, we now create sort of premium content offers. We create lead magnets that are closely or like very, very tied that are custom to the episodes. We literally create custom offers for these episodes. We work with the editorial team. We have a writer, and like it contextually makes so much more sense because it's just an additional resource for the audience that's directly tied to it. We're not selling our product on YouTube at all. We're not talking about it. We're talking about, you know, we're giving away exclusive templates from the guest that came on, or we're like giving away prompts, or like we are really...
You're building that relationship. Absolutely. Yeah. It's more funnel based, whereas on the audio side, it's really brand association. It's really thought leadership. It's really brand trust, right? And when we talk about ROI in terms of branded podcasts, that's it, right? It's something where, hey, you're going to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a good CRM because it's worth it, right? It's going to get you those sales. It's going to help refine your sales process. It's going to help you build your pipeline. And when you're buying a big ticket item, it's a much slower burn. You just have to be ready for when they make the decision, but you have to be top of mind the entire process. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so that part of it is really, you know, and sales cycles are even longer now. And it's like, I finally, you know, a couple of years ago, I think it came across on LinkedIn, and I saw this post of someone who had like listened to My First Million for years. And he's like, I have always listened to My First Million for years, you know, yada, yada. And like, I needed a CRM and I bought HubSpot. And we were like, this is the most amazing testimony, because here it is. This guy's listening to the show. He knows about the acquisition. He's been on this journey. He's at a point where he's ready to buy a CRM, and he goes with us. Right. And so stuff like that is such a powerful testimonial on the product side. But on the premium content side, like, we really try to monetize by just directly providing another piece of value that's highly relevant to the content, and like using that as another way to sort of stay favorable and provide that additional value outside of the episode. We also try and have been trying to build up sort of our media brands a lot more, in the sense of where like now we don't need to put HubSpot on those content offers. Now we can put My First Million, and people love that brand and have such a affinity with that brand that like that, I think in some cases, especially now in sort of the era where people's brand power is a lot less than it used to, right? And so we're able to, you know, sort of through those separate media brands that we have, kind of go the creator route and be able to build trust that way as well, which I think is really interesting.
Absolutely. And, you know, what I think we're talking about here, which is so valuable for everyone listening, because this is something that I talk to my clients about on the branded side, right? Your audio podcast and your video podcast are two different products. A lot of the time, they're two different audiences. They're two different sales processes. They're two different ways of building trust. It is different, right? And sometimes you can do, you know, a video that's optimized for audio, right? And a lot of the time, you're going to have separate cuts of your podcast. You're going to grab the listener differently with video versus audio, right? You're going to have maybe a little bit more of a chit chat on a video, and in audio, you're going to go straight into top takeaways, and you're going to grab the listener before the intro, right? And so I do think I talk to my clients about this all the time. I do think it's super important to have that kind of perspective, and it's so smart that you guys have built it out. And like you said, people follow creators, right? Obviously, HubSpot has very high brand trust. And also, when you build that relationship with a creator enough, you're going to buy the creator, right? You're going to buy their program. You're going to buy their coaching system. You're going to buy their email sequence, whatever it is, right? Whatever the product is. And so it's so smart to build that in as well, because then it's an additional layer of them connecting with HubSpot, right? It's an additional level of the funnel. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar to sort of what we were chatting about at the start, where like we're helping them build
their
sort
own
of
brands,
that same motion.
right?
Yeah. Build their own brands, but also build that motion of like, even though we're not, like, the monetization path is different, like we're still allowing the direct audience to creator path of like, they're not pushing a product, they're pushing something that's actually valuable and that's free. And that's a huge thing, I think, as well.
Absolutely. And I also think on the audio side of things, right? Like, people aren't listening to a podcast all the time to learn something to buy a course. It's much more YouTube focused when you think about the listener journey, who's listening, why they're listening, you know, where they are, typing in search. You know, when I'm at a screen and I'm typing something in, wanting to learn something, that is very different than going on a hot girl walk, wanting to learn about, you know, general business trends, right?
Yes.
And so I think that tailoring your content for each platform is a lot of work, for sure. And in the right circumstance with the right resources, it pays for itself.
Definitely. Definitely. I think I love what you said, like meeting your listeners and your viewers where they are is so important. And this is, I think, one of the most frustrating things for me about the video conversation is it's like, if your audience is not on YouTube, like that's fine. Like don't go on YouTube because you feel like you need to be on YouTube. Like if you understand enough about your audience and about who they are and where they are and they're not there, like that's fine. Like you don't have to be everywhere. You just need to double down where they are and give them content in a format that they like. And like, that's it. It's very simple, but I think a lot of people sort of miss out on that. It's like if your audience is on YouTube because they want to watch Real Housewives recaps, like they don't want to watch the tactical business content that you have. And
no,
that's fine.
Unless
like,
you're a Real Housewives recap podcast, chill out.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely think, I used to talk about this all the time about, with social platforms, you want to hang out where your audience is hanging out. And it is the same with distribution. It is absolutely the same. Which podcast apps, right? Like a lot of shows are more Apple Podcast heavy or more Spotify heavy or more Pocket Cast heavy, right? Or more True Fans heavy, right? I think it's something where, you want to meet your audience where they're at because they're there for you, right? And it's one of those things where you're not going to go to the airport to meet your friend when they ask you to meet them at their house, right? You have to meet people where they're at on the platforms where they're at, where they want to be met. It's definitely something where we talk about this all the time. And that applies to platform, that applies to socials, that applies to, even newsletter. It really is important. So I definitely agree with you there. Well, Carly, what's one key move, mindset, or even like a metric that's made the biggest impact on your podcasting career and the success of the creators that you work with at HubSpot Media Network?
Yeah, I love this question. I love this question so much. And I'm going to tell a little anecdote that I think is really funny. Someone on my team at HubSpot a couple of weeks ago, they gave me this title, and I posted on LinkedIn about this. They told me that I'm the chief morale officer for our team, which I think is really funny. And it really got me thinking a lot about just sort of my journey at HubSpot and my journey of working with creators and clients for so long. And like, I really just believe that the best thing that you can do as a creator, as an individual, as a person, as a whole, is like relationships are everything. Being a human, just being a person, like showing up and being your authentic self. And I know that this sounds so corny and so basic, but it is so true. And it really does stand out, I think, especially today, where like their media literacy is at an all-time low. It's so hard to connect with people who are actually sharing real sort of thoughts and using their brain in that way. And like everything that I've been able to do here has been because of the relationships that I've had with clients, with people in the industry. Like I owe everything to the people around me, and I'm a huge cheerleader for everyone. And like that, and I'm not doing it in a performative way. It's very authentic.
This is what we hear. This is so common on PodBiz. This is a really common answer because our industry is still really young, right? We all still know each other. Dane Cardiel actually mentioned this on his episode. He said, and he quoted someone else. So for everybody listening today, go back and listen to Dane's episode. But he basically said, we're all growing old together here, right? Like we're all here together at this beginning moment, big bang moment of podcasting. And we're all going to grow old together. We're all going to know each other for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And so it's really important to be kind. It's really important to stand by your word. It's really important to do your best, whatever that looks like. And we're all human, right? We all have parents. We all have kids. If you have kids, we all have lives as human beings. And so I think that compassion is also a really big aspect as well.
Yeah, the compassion is a huge part of it. And I mean, I even think about when I first came here and started working with clients and was just like, this is going to be a very deep and a very long-term relationship. And I do not want it to be transactional in any way. So like, how am I showing up? Like, how am I appreciating them? Like, how am I taking care of them? Like, how am I being authentic and like telling them who I am and like encouraging them to do the same? And like, we're all people first. And I think specifically in like advertiser to creator relationships or just in sort of client relationships as well, like it can be very easy for there to be some kind of power dynamic. And it's like at the end of the day, and this again goes back to working with the right people, if you both have a shared goal, you both want to understand and help one another, like just having that foundation and picking people that are really aligned and really bought into that is just so much, it's just mutually beneficial for everyone. But yeah, I think just remembering like people. We're all here on the spinning rock together. Like we're all just trying to figure it out, and just having compassion and empathy for others is really important. And I think being someone that values, you know, having authentic relationships, building relationships, and always being someone that, you know, wants to learn and wants to connect has been the number one thing that's just helped me and has resonated with me throughout my career.
Absolutely. Well, Carly, what's something that people don't know about what you do?
Ooh, this is a great question. So this is interesting. So as I've sort of grown at HubSpot and as our media network has grown, we have started to do a lot in newsletter land. And so I actually do a ton of work with newsletters and with other publishers, both on the creator side and with, you know, sort of the Wall Street Journals and the other sort of newsletter businesses of the world. And it's fascinating to see. You know, I think every platform is different and every type of creator is different, right? I love the podcast world because people are so friendly. We all know each other. Like there's a shared goal. People love to collaborate. And every sort of medium has a different, I guess, vibe, you could say, or POV.
Texture. Yeah.
Yes, different texture. And, you know, the newsletter space is something that we're seeing a lot more podcasters sort of be interested in and, you know, either from a distribution perspective or from just owning your audience. And you know, it was really interesting for me when I first sort of entered the newsletter business because it's been a business for a lot longer. It's been an industry for a lot longer, right? Email has been around for a long time. It's been a place that's traditionally very much relied on advertisers. And so a lot of the work that I do in the newsletter world is, you know, more on an earned basis. So we're figuring out how to work together without spending any dollars and how to be creative. And I think that in partnerships in general, we're going to see a lot more of sort of pushing the mold and, you know, two parties figuring out how to work with each other, work with one another and provide mutual value without there having to sort of be that transactional dollar exchange. And so if anyone has any questions about the newsletter world, it's kind
Carly,
of like sort of a secret world. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for podcasters out there, just really quickly, like what have you seen in terms of trends and things that podcasters should be doing with their email newsletters?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different things that are interesting. We definitely are seeing a lot of folks go to Substack, which it is a newsletter platform in the sense, but it's also more of a community platform, I think. And so if you don't have a private community and you want to start to write and have sort of a direct interaction with your audience and you don't want to be on YouTube where that's a lot easier, I think creating either a community or going on Substack or going somewhere where you can sort of expand or sort of go a little bit further and connect with your audience on the content side is really interesting. There's also, I think on Substack and on Beehive, like you can host your own, like, you know, gated audio or like private audio for those people as well.
Private virtual events. Yes, you can on Substack.
Yeah.
I definitely subscribe to a few creators and consult with a few creators about that. Absolutely. Yeah. Substack is coming in hot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think newsletter is for someone who is maybe an audio listener or for someone that's a video viewer, like moving them over to a newsletter is a really natural path. Like people that are already listening to you, they already want more value. Like sort of instead of having them just listen or watch you on one platform, like giving them kind of an off ramp to discover more and like be more a part of your universe. I think written content is really powerful for that.
Especially because there's so much AI. There's just so much AI these days. What I've seen and you know, I'd love your take on this, but what I've seen in terms of trends for creators on Substack is that people who subscribe to a creator on Substack do not want AI slop. They want handwritten love notes. They want the tea. They want the biz, right? They want to know the authentic content that is behind, you know, your paywall. They want to know the authentic content that is the true value of your brand. And they don't want something that's been written by ChatGPT. They just don't.
100%. And I think the other thing that's so great about that is we know that people are looking for newsletters or looking for written content. You're already a trusted brand. It's a lot easier to grow that channel when you already have a really dedicated and loyal audience that love you and want to consume more. Like it's very easy actually to get people to sort of funnel and to, you know, I think people worry that when they create, you know, sort of a secondary channel like that, that they're going to lose their audio audience. So it's like from an editorial perspective, like providing a different POV or additional resources, or like having them kind of be companions to one another is super important. You don't want to just like take the transcript of your show and then like send it out to your email list, right?
No,
like
no,
that's
no.
like
it's
the
more
last
work.
thing you want
It's
to
a
do,
lot,
but...
right? No, absolutely. It's not there yet. People want brands to creators to podcasts because people want to connect directly in the ecosphere of just being inundated with nonstop content that is a lot of the time AI, inauthentic, in your face, just busy. And so when they really subscribe to your content via newsletter, also podcast, they're subscribing to personally connect with you. And that has value and should be honored for sure.
100%. And what I think, what I love about it more than sort of sending people maybe to like a video product is that like YouTube is so distracting, right? Like you get on there, there's like all these pop-ups, there's all these suggested videos, like things are going on. It's like, it's hard. It's hard to just sit and digest and be able to connect with the content. And something like a newsletter that's coming directly in your inbox, you're not like, the level of noise that you're seeing and your ability to focus, I think is a lot different than what we see on sort of more like search-based platforms. And so I do love it from that side of things. And then of course it can be another revenue stream. It can be another way to monetize with advertisers. There's a lot of other things that are great for it in terms of the creator side, but for your audience, I think it is really valuable to give them a place to connect with you, to connect with their fellow audience members, to have a conversation, to learn more, to be able to experience sort of your POV in a different medium. I think, knowing someone through the audio side or through the video side, and then being able to read their voice or read sort of how they think about things or how they look at things is, I think, very interesting as well. There's many creators that I follow who have a voice that comes across very differently, or they think about things differently, or they package and position it differently when it's written versus on the audio side. And it's always so helpful for me because you have so much more context into how they think about things as a whole, right? Sometimes the way that we speak about things or the way that we articulate them might not be the way that we would articulate them when they're written down. And so I think it just also helps from an audience content perspective or a context perspective, understand so much more about the individual and about their POVs. And that only helps the audience trust you more.
Absolutely. And I really love what you said about attention spans being different with different mediums, visual versus audio versus read. I think that that's subtle and important. And we're going to understand a lot more about that soon. That's what it feels like. Yeah. Well, Carly, if you had to start over today, what would you do differently to grow faster or smarter?
Ooh, this is not something, well, it is something that I would do differently. I would say, I think one of the challenges in general in the content and in the marketing world as a whole is just having a long-term sustainable strategy versus just chasing the next big thing. And I think especially when you work with clients or when you're in a network and you have people that have different POVs about whether they should fall in line and try to release the Taylor Swift meme that, everyone's releasing right now, or if you want to, to try to hit those big numbers, or if you want to just, go the arguably maybe the less sexy path of like being really clear of who your audience is, what you're doing, why you're doing it for them, why it makes sense, and like staying true to that.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think, some brands are doing a combo. Some creators are sticking so hard to their guns that, they are just doing the thing that they're known for. They're not going to comment on anything else. And it definitely is a valuable strategy. I think both can work for sure.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, Carly, what are you most excited about coming up in podcasting?
Ooh, okay. I am very, very excited about two things. I think these are kind of two things that we're seeing that are, sort of just now starting and are going to continue to. I think number one is like we are so back in terms of being in person. Like IRL is back. The pandemic is over. It's really hard to find community and to find value online in this era of AI. And so I think the best place that you can be as a creator or as a brand is to like have a really good and a very bespoke IRL experience that's going to give them that surprise and delight moment. Please, no more happy hours. That is not a surprise and delight moment for someone. So
we are back, baby, but not for happy hour. No, and I think a lot less people are drinking these days as well. People don't just want to like go to something to just be around alcohol. They want to meet and connect in person with purpose. I think that's 100%. Been a major theme. Yeah, for sure.
100%. So yeah, IRL is really big and is something that we're investing heavily in. I would say the other thing that's kind of has a relationship with that is just private communities. So again, because it's so hard to find community, it's like if you can't be in person or your community can't come together in person, like having a gated community that's for your sort of most loyal people, for people that want to continue the conversation, that want to invest in, you know, getting to know one another and getting to know you as a creator. I do think that communities are going to be huge, again, just because it's very hard to find value just like in the sea of the internet these days. And it's very hard to sort of be able to have a place where you know that, you know, you can trust sort of who's in there. It's not full of bots, all of those different things. So yeah, I think community in general, very big. IRL is a huge part of that, of course. And then I think online private communities are also sort of going to be the next big thing that are going to come around.
Absolutely. We are back, baby. We're back in person. Yes. We're back online. We're back together. I love it. Well, Carly Baker, Head of Media Partnerships at the HubSpot Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us here on PodBiz.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and happy 2026.